Hi, I'm Michelle Crompton.
I'm Jeff Jones.
And I'm Bob Danziger.
We're here to welcome you to the 300th anniversary celebration of the Brandenburg Concertos, a collection of musical masterpieces composed by Johann Sebastian Bach.
Over the first few minutes of this celebration, we enjoyed a background story about the Brandenburg Concertos that gives us a framing perspective from which to appreciate the artistic excellence and triumph of the human spirit that these masterpieces represent. It is, perhaps, for these reasons that Brandenburg was chosen to be the first musical selection on the Golden Record carried by the Voyager spacecraft.
Voyager was designed to last over 5 billion years, 500 million more than the Sun. Launched through a grand tour of the planets into an orbit around the Milky Way, an inscription on the record says, "To the makers of music, all worlds, all times." Featuring 27 musical selections from around the world, the first music on it is a Brandenburg Concerto. This collection may be the only remnant of Earth, the only documentation that we ever existed after our sun dies, and is arguably the single most important recording in human history.
Over the next hour and a half, we're going to take you on a musical journey that features a medley of highlights from various exemplary performances of the Brandenburg Concertos. A few of our musical highlights honor the Brandenburg's global legacy and feature artists from around the world.
The Brandenburg has been performed more than any other classical music in the history of Monterey County. In the spirit of celebrating the Brandenburg's inclusion on the Golden Record, we're going to accompany all of these musical highlights with photographs and paintings by Monterey artists like you are seeing now, and stories related to life in Monterey, California. We do this to share the beauty of this place with all of you, and to imagine what we might share of this place on a future Golden Record.
Monterey really came together for this celebration, and we'd like to take a moment to recognize some of our friends and partners. First, thanks go to our co-sponsors, Michelle Crompton, Director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, and Jeff Jones, Chair of the Department of Music and Performing Arts at California State University, Monterey Bay. And we are so grateful to our partners at the Alliance for California Traditional Arts, California Rodeo Salinas, Carmel Bach Festival, Monterey County Pops, Monterey Jazz Festival, Monterey Symphony, and Palenque Arts. All of these organizations made special contributions to the celebration today, and we couldn't have done it without them.
Part of the work of the Department of Music and Performing Arts at CSUMB is to build a distinctively excellent educational program through mutually beneficial partnerships with performing arts organizations in our region. From grassroots community groups to internationally significant organizations, the Monterey region is rich in the performing arts. Michelle, Bob, and I are excited to partner with all of you on the 300th anniversary celebration of the Brandenburg Concertos and hope this is the beginning of a long and prosperous relationship.
An hour and a half is going to go by fast, and we're going to cover a lot. If you want additional details about the program, including links to the music, information on the artist, Voyager, the Golden Record, and more, go to the event website at brandenburg-concerto300th-anniversary.com.
Now, let the celebration continue. Let's toast the Brandenburg Concertos for all the joy they've given us through the years. We've just completed the first 300 years, and we've got another 5 billion to go. Let's get at it. I want to tell you the story of the two Voyager spacecraft. It's one of the great adventures in the history of Earth. To get permission to fly this project, the NASA chief went to then President Nixon. He told him the planets will align to slingshot a spacecraft from Jupiter to Saturn to Uranus, Neptune, and then interstellar space in 1977. Something that happens only once every 176 years. But only a 4-year mission to Saturn was funded. Jet Propulsion Labs secretly built them for the grand tour, for interstellar space, for everything. They've lasted 42 years so far, did the full tour of the planets, and have left our solar system to carry messages from Earth for another 5 billion years or more.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
I worked at Jet Propulsion Lab on renewable energy, electric vehicles, and that sort of thing. I did not work on Voyager at all, even though I worked at the same place. This is not my personal story. I just love this and think you're going to love it too.
When I was managing Vision 34, I wasn't on the project yet, but we were providing hardware for the project, and there was some review I was sitting up, and I asked the question, are you guys going to put anything on this spacecraft? And they said, what? What for? I said, well, send a message. And they said, no. But then I got to be project manager. And so remembering the Pioneer thing, Carl Sagan was on the project at that time. And he was a pretty good friend of mine, and so I called him up one day and said, hey, Carl, we need to have something on this spacecraft. Are you willing to take a crack at it? He said, absolutely, yes. He said, give me a proposal. He came back with $25K and 3 or 4 people he was going to put together as a team, and they had sort of a general outline. And I said, good, go ahead with it. And so out of that came the record. And I think the record is tremendous. We had 3 things on that spacecraft that were all messages to 3 different groups of people. One, we got everybody who was working on the project and all our families and significant others. There were 6,000. We had a big a family day. The spacecraft was in the thermal vac chamber. We had tables set up outside where people could write their name. And we had 6,000 signatures, and we photographically reduced them to a little 6x9 aluminum foil, and they went into the thermal blanket. So that was a message, and it was a message to the people that we are acknowledging your contribution by putting your name or your name of your family and friends on it. So that was one. The other one was the American flag. The American flag was acknowledgement to the taxpayers. We recognize you, we recognize this country, and the dedication of everybody in the country who supported it as is. And the third message was a message that Carl sent, which was not only a message to the aliens, if there ever were any, but it was also a message he was, I think, trying to stimulate people on the earth to think about how you would go about communicating with a totally foreign society or a totally alien culture, and how we define ourselves.
I became the producer of only one record in my career, and only 2 copies of it were made, and they were both hurled off the earth, so I don't know if that's a credential or not.
It was designed as a 4-year mission. The engineers, or let's just put it this way, the managers were told not to think beyond 4 years. The engineers all thought beyond 4 years. When you look at the history of it, they'll say, well, I had a choice between part A and part B. Part B was going to last me longer. I chose that part. I didn't tell my boss. I wanted to make it as robust as possible. And It's true, and I think the bosses kind of looked a different way. As long as it didn't, affect the budget too much, the boss looked the other way, and Voyager was built as robustly as possible.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. I was the manager of Division 34 before I went over to Voyager. And what I told the people in Division 34 was, look, we got to be very, very sure that we don't build anything into this spacecraft design-wise that's going to limit its life other than the expendables. And we made some design changes that I never told Sturmeyer about along those lines.
We aimed a spacecraft and went very close, and had we missed, we would have made the first impact crater.
The flyby is basically a week-long affair that's 24 hours a day. It's intense.
For the press the next morning. Now at that time, to get ready for the next morning, you had to send material out for preparation. The images, the imaging team had to choose which images. They had to write the captions, prepare them for the periscope. Have them printed.
No digital then.
No digital. If you wanted a picture from Voyager, you had to be here collecting it. There was no internet, there was none of that. It was all, you had to be here. So people who were here really were very advantaged. Today, everybody can be there, but in those days, only a limited number of people could have the sense of discovery that we all enjoyed day after day after day.
That's the end of the planetary part of Voyager. That's the last port of call. The last thing that we'll see in our solar system is now behind us. And it went from the Voyager planetary mission to the Voyager interstellar mission.
We could have enhanced the color a bit to make a somewhat prettier picture, but out of respect to the Voyager spacecraft, we decided to show it to you just as it is. So this was Voyager's farewell to us, and it's our farewell to you.
I was passing by the secretary's desk, and she said, "Oh, Candy, there's a reporter that wants to talk to you." And he said, "The countdown clock just went from minus, counting down, to counting up. Your Voyager's now leaving Neptune." And he said, "How does that make you feel?" And in that moment, I dissolved into tears.
Meanwhile, Voyager 1 is still kind of cruising out there, getting farther and farther out. And a number of folks on the team, including Carl Sagan, had this idea that before we have to shut the cameras down, let's turn around, look back towards the sun, and let's take a picture of our solar system, unlike any that had ever been taken before. On Valentine's Day, 1990, taking this beautiful family portrait.
When we did our portrait of each of the planets, I was the first person to look at the pictures, and I knew every blemish. And so I could pretty quickly go blemish, blemish, blemish. And I thought, well, where's the Earth? How could we, And then I realized there were a lot of streaks of light in that image. And I realized finally that the Earth was sitting in one of those rays of light.
And the next slide.
Earth in a sunbeam.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.
That is the story of Voyager. One of the most important parts of the celebration of the Brandenburg Concerto and the Golden Record has been to find out what music would you like to have heard on the Voyager Golden Record that was not included the first time around? Or put another way, what list of music would you want to represent all of humanity and human history that might be launched on a future Golden Record that would travel through space for the next 5 billion years? The music that has been suggested so far is listed in the scroll that's coming up the screen right now. The Brandenburg Concerto 300th Anniversary.com has links to almost all of the songs for your listening pleasure. I've loved listening to them. The music we're playing right now is a medley of a few of them. Carl Sagan and his team chose the music for the Golden Record back in the mid-1970s and tried to make sure all the continents and a lot of the cultures on Earth were represented. He was also part of NASA's team to search the universe for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. Today that work is carried on by the SETI Institute, who have artists in residence in addition to its scientists to help its mission to explore the possibilities of life in the universe and share discoveries with the public.
From every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
SETI's composer in residence is Felipe Perez Santiago, who has started the Earthling Project to collect voices from all over the world and make a composition from them to send into space. 41 countries are represented so far. There are 7 compositions: lullaby, love, festive, melancholy, grief, spiritual, and death. You are hearing right now the world premiere of Lullaby.
You got que tienen sueño. Nina, nana, nina, oh, questo bimbo chi lo do.
And all 7 have their world debut today on the Brandenburg Concerto 300th Anniversary.com website.
Se lo tiene una settimana, se lo do al proveneo, se lo tiene.
You got an IQ.
of 22. Your most expensive clothes are boy shoes. You're walking down the street throwing
La noche caminaba entre las nubes.
Turn 16 and you
Tus divinos ojos con sueño.
Questo bimbo a chi lo do, se lo do a lupo.
Now it's your turn. Join the chat, or download the Earthling Project app, or send us an email with your ideas and we will share them with the world.
Llamadela, pom pom pom, oso sanga, pom pom pom. Mariva querida, se Mariva nace.
You gotta keep us warm
El día
de esta canción.
I haven't followed the Bach because it's my God. I always follow Bach because the Baroque music is very close to the Mexican traditional music. So I love the Baroque period. I love Bach, I love Telemann, all that guys.
My name is John Clayton. I play bass. I am a composer. I'm a conductor. I co-lead the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra. I love to teach, and I come from a family of musicians. Johann Sebastian Bach grew up in Eisenach, a place humid and hot in the summer, frigid in the winter, no indoor plumbing, and frequent death. What Eisenach had in great abundance, the solace and balm of its 6,000 souls, was music. Among the Bachs especially, music was a powerful tonic, and it helped to keep the extended family together. Once a year, they gathered at one or another Thuringian town for a day of festivities at which music, of a sort not meant for the church, was the main event. They sang popular songs, the contents of which were partly comic and partly naughty. They not only laughed heartily at themselves, but excited equally hearty and irresistible laughter in everybody that heard them. Every day of Sebastian's childhood was filled with music. His father, as director of town music and the town band, was chief dispenser of all the instrumental music in town. Every morning at 10 and after 5, looking over the marketplace from the balcony of the town hall, Ambrosius Bach's band played dances and folk tunes in the chorales. The town band numbered only 5, but each member was trained on several instruments. Johann Sebastian Bach was 62 years old in 1747, only 3 years from his death, and making the long trip from Leipzig, which would be his last journey, was surely more concession than a wish. An emphatically self-directed, even stubborn man, Bach took a dim view of this particular king, the Prussian army having overrun Leipzig less than 2 years before, and at his advanced age, he could not have relished spending 2 days and a night being jostled about in a coach to meet the bitter enemy of his own royal patron, the Elector of Saxony. Even more problematic than the political and physical difficulties of such a journey, the meeting represented something of a confrontation for the aging composer. A confrontation, one might say, with his age. In music and virtually every other sphere of life in mid-18th century Germany, Frederick represented all that was new and fashionable, while Bach's music had come to stand for everything ancient and outmoded. His musical language, teaching, and tradition had been rejected and denounced by young composers and theorists, even by his own sons, and Bach had every reason to fear that he and his music were to be forgotten entirely after his death, had indeed been all but forgotten already. Bach came, despite the challenges involved, because Frederick was the employer of his son, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, the chief harpsichordist in Prussia's Royal Kapelle. Frederick gave Bach an impossibly long and complex musical figure, and he asked the old master to make a 3-part fugue of it. So difficult was the figure Bach was given, it did not admit one single canonical imitation. In other words, the royal theme was constructed to be as resistant to counterpoint as possible. Still, Bach managed, with almost unimaginable ingenuity, to do it. When Bach had finished the 3-part fugue, his audience of virtuosi was seized with astonishment. The author learned from Bach a universe ultimately discoverable through reason alone can only be a barren place, and that music sounding forth from such a world might be pretty, but it can never be beautiful.
Stand by.
Houston, while you're looking that up, you might recognize what I have in my hand is the handle for the contingency sample return. It just so happens to have a genuine 6 iron on the bottom of it. In my left hand, I have a little white pellet that's familiar to millions of Americans. Drop it down. Unfortunately, the suit is so stiff I can't do this with 2 hands, but I'm going to try a little sand trap shot here. They got more dirt than ball this side. Got more dirt than ball. Here we go again.
That looked like a slice to me, Al.
There we go. Ready to die. One more. Miles and miles and miles.
In your education and so forth, did you interface with the Brandenburg in any way?
Well, you know, it's funny. I actually was introduced to it by Dave. That's very funny you say that, because I grew up not studying with him, but he was in Wilton, Connecticut, and I would go to his house every once in a while. And the first time I heard it actually was the first time I went to his house. And he was playing it on his vinyl, on his record player. And that's the first thing I heard when I walked in to meet him, was that.
Well, that's why.
So, yeah. So actually, it's kind of funny that you said that. But, yeah, and so I've heard him play it. I've heard him, you know, we've actually improvised on it, but at the time I didn't really know what it was necessarily, you know. But that was my introduction to it. I mean, I've been listening to it ever since.
From our hearts to yours.
From our hearts to yours.
From our hearts to yours.
From our hearts to yours. From our hearts to yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
From our hearts to yours, thank you.
I see